Athletic Brewing Company is reimagining beer for the modern active adult. Their great tasting athletic craft brews let you enjoy the refreshing taste of craft beer without the alcohol or the hangover. You can enjoy them anytime, anywhere, and still be healthy, active, and at your best. And win AB won North American Brewer of the Year at the International Beer Challenge, the judges were shocked to find out it was alcohol free. I mean, seriously? Buzz-free beer that is better than the rest? And to top it all off, as part of Athletic Brewing, Two for the Trails program, 2% of all their sales are donated to causes and organizations that support healthy, outdoor, active living through park and trail cleanup and maintenance. Whether you've decided to cut alcohol out of your life for good, for a night, or just one drink, Athletic Brewing Company provides an option without compromises that you're guaranteed to enjoy. To try their award-winning non-alcoholic beers, go to athleticbrewing.com. Use the code PNF20. You'll save 20% off your first order. There is free shipping on orders of 2 6-packs or more, or you can use their store finder to find it on shelves near you. Athletic Brewing. Brew without compromise. This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
You're listening to Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast with your hosts Ryan Milford and Sean Lavery. Welcome back to Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. Got the co-host, Sean.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
And tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Bobby Roast Beef from the Jigs and Bigs podcast. Welcome, sir.
How you doing? Good to be here.
Yeah, I've actually listened to your podcast for a while, and we were talking about it just beforehand, where you listened to my original podcast and all that. So, like, I think it's really cool. Like, I didn't know you even listened to my podcast. Back before then, and I listened to yours. I think I've listened when I could. There's so many fishing podcasts out there now, but I've listened, I think, since like August.
Oh, really? Okay, so you've been going back.
Yeah, well, it was somewhere around that time frame.
Yeah.
Somebody had, made a post on like the KBF page, like, oh, what's some good kayak fishing podcasts? And I believe it was you that actually commented on there and said, like, oh, I do this podcast, Jigs and Bigs. I'm like, I like jigs and I like big fish. Let me check it out.
What's not to like, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I checked it out, and I did want to say you have one of the best like produced fishing podcasts that I've heard out there. So you're doing awesome, a really good job with that.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. I've been I mentioned before we were talking, I've been a DJ television. So that's come in handy. It's one of the only things that working in TV has come in handy for, has been producing a decent podcast.
Well, I actually, when I first started listening, I didn't know you or anything. Oh, actually, I don't really know you now. I just talked to you for the first time really tonight.
Yep.
But whenever I first heard your podcast, I'm like, this guy's got to have some kind of like experience with like audio engineering or something, because like it just sounds too good. And kind of find out you were a DJ and you're in like game show hosting and all this, and like this guy's like a celebrity that started a kayak fishing podcast. But
man.
But yeah, it's good to have you here. So welcome again. I talked a little bit about who you are, whatever, but I guess you can do a better job at introducing yourself if you want to take a minute and, introduce yourself about who you are and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Bobby Roast Beef. I've been professionally Bobby Roast Beef for about like 7 or 8 years now. I've been a DJ since I was. I mean, it's going on like 30 years now almost. And I do events mainly and things like that. I've worked in television for a while. I've been fishing my whole life really, and I took a big hiatus when I was somewhere in like just about in high school, really. And I didn't really pick it back up until about 2012. And when I did, I was fishing with a friend of mine, and it was just one of these things. I was looking for a hobby. I was basically just looking for something to keep myself busy. And I said to my buddy, I said, well, let me tag along next time you go fishing. So I went out and I bought a rod and reel. I think it was an Eagle Claw spinning combo I got from like Amazon or whatever. And we went out with some live bait. And that's I always grown up fishing for trout. And I was always a live bait fisherman, and I never had really tried any artificial baits or any different techniques or anything like that. Like you ask me like a gear ratio or, to me, it was just all the same. A fishing rod was a fishing rod, and I started to, what was it? There was a box service back then. I think it was Tackle Grab was the one that I subscribed to like way back. And I would just to sort of like get some diverse stuff and try some different things. And I fished just casually here and there. And then I took about a year off. There's something on our Patreon about that. There's a React video of that. It's a funny story. I took a year off because I just had it, and I decided I went out with security at one of the venues that I host trivia at. And he'd asked me, if I fished at all. And I said, yeah, a little bit. And he says, tomorrow, let's get together and go. We'll meet at this pond. So I said, screw it. We'll go for it. At this point, I had acquired a couple of bait casters and things. And I was like, we'll give it a go. And I hooked into, now living in Massachusetts, where I am in the Northeast, bass have a different kind of growing season than other parts of the country. So for us, if you break a 4 to 5 pounder, that's like a record. Like that's something to be really, really impressed with up here. I had laid into like a 3.5 pounder. Like first cast, I was just like, son of a bitch, here we go. Done deal. Like we're getting back into this. And that's exactly what happened. I from there on, it was just, okay, we're going to do this over and over and over again. I made it a point to get out and fish 3 to 4 times a week. And I thought I was hot shit. I think I would fish, and I would probably catch a fish more times that I was out than I would get skunked. And I was like, this is fantastic. And then I had a background, early on, like back in high school. The co-host of my show, Sean the Fisherman, and I, we worked together at this television and appliance store in the warehouse. And he has been into bass fishing heavily since he was a kid. And like I said, he's forgotten more about fishing than I know. And he's a wealth of information. And he does tournaments. He does he does kayak tournaments online. He does MAKB for the KBF Trail here in Massachusetts, as well as some other tournament events and things like that. And I started kind of picking his brain a little bit on how things go. And I realized I kind of put myself in my own place. I was like, oh, hold on a second. So I started keeping records slowly. I just started using FishBrain. And my goal was always to become as versatile as possible. So I would kind of grab one presentation, one bait, and kind of make sure that I worked that really well until I started to get a little bit of confidence in it. And then I'd sort of move on to the next thing. And you're right about this time was when COVID sort of started, and the shit hit the fan. I wasn't working. I had been listening to a bunch of fishing podcasts. Bass Fishing for Noobs was one that I had been listening to like since you started, Ryan. And because I had kind of considered, a lot of times I would listen to bass fishing podcasts. Once I sort of realized that, like, no, I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. I started to look more of like the core basics of fishing, of bass fishing. And I started to really kind of break that down. So I used a lot of the tools that were out there. And I think one of the podcasts that I got into, and it only was out for like a minute, it was Ben Milliken's podcast. And it was, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 episodes, and it's quality. Like, I mean, he's a guy I look up to. Like, he knows his shit. And I had been listening to that, and I was just like, this is such a great platform. If I had the time, I would do this. And COVID made the time for me. So I decided, screw it, I'm just going to do it. And I put it together, and now it's kind of grown into something that I never, ever expected ever to work out like to where it's been. It's pretty dynamite.
And that's awesome. And I remember hearing you talk about before, like when you started your podcast, like you were kind of looking for something that you weren't really finding in other podcasts. And I that's actually how Bass Fishing for Noobs got started. Like, I'm the type of person, for me to learn something, I need it like really broken down, and I need to know how it works.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to, when I'm like, okay, so that's why doing this makes it happen or whatever. And, you don't really get that. There, a lot of podcasts or even YouTube channels and stuff kind of, it's like they assume that you know a certain level of what they're talking about.
Yep.
I guess you can say. And, for me, like, I needed it broken down further so I could understand it a little better. And that's why I started Bass Fishing for Noobs, because I wasn't finding anything like that out there. So, I was able to control how deep we went into it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so yeah, like, I don't know. It's still just awesome to me, like, that even as bad as that was like somewhat of an inspiration for you to start a fishing podcast. And you did a much better job than I did at getting started. So
it's so funny that you say that. I'm a real big believer in there. Every once in a while on my Instagram, on the Jigs and Bigs Instagram, I'll share something like a motivational thing. And there's one thing, I think it was Gary Vee had shared, and he used the example of a podcast, and it's an idea that I've always kind of had in the back of my head, but and this probably comes from, playing music in bands and but even when I started DJing, they're like the first podcast that you do is going to suck. Just live with it. But you'll never get to that 50th one if the first one doesn't happen. So you might as well just get it out of the way and take the leap and learn as you go. So that way, when you do get to that 50th one, you've learned and you've grown, and you've at least got that accomplishment. Because like, if you don't take the risk, you're never ever going to get where you want to be. There was another guy. It's funny too, because I actually I've been listening to his music a lot lately, and he's an artist. He's from Providence, Rhode Island. The guy's name is Mark Miloff, and he gave me some fantastic advice that is terrible for fishermen if you live up north. And the advice is this: play on the thin ice. Because that's where the greatest reward is. Terrible if you're an ice fisherman. Don't listen to that advice if you're ice. But he was just like, the biggest reward is where the biggest risk is. You got to take chances. And, my wife would like it if maybe I didn't take so many chances sometimes, but, you never know if you don't take a shot. You've got to at least go for it. Make a decision, one way or the other, for better or for worse, go for it.
100%.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. And, honestly, for me, when I started my podcast, I probably would have quit not long after I started if it wasn't for Paddle and Fin. Brian, wanted to bring me on, and that kind of pushed me to keep going with it, because, man, I nobody knew my name in the fishing industry. I had a few friends that bass fished and stuff, but other than that, nobody knew who I was. You send out a message like, hey, will you come on my podcast? Well, I don't know your podcast. I don't know you. Like,
exactly.
And, half the time wouldn't even get a reply from people. So, but I forget where I was going with that. But yeah, let's get into some fishing.
Let's do it.
You were saying like a 4 to 5 pound bass is like a trophy bass up there with you.
Yeah.
So what's your PB right now?
My PB, when I was weighing fish exclusively, I think I was at like a 3.3 or a 3.35 originally. And I mean, that's a good size fish, but it was when I started kayak fishing and I started getting into the whole catch, photo, release process.
Measuring.
And I had a conversation with Sean, my co-host, and he explained to me, he's like, look, look at it like this. He goes, if you have a fish that's, 4 pounds, you catch a 4 pounder, that's a great fish. But what time of year did you catch that fish? Because that's got to be taken into account. So if you caught that fish in the spring, that fish that was a great fish in the spring, if you catch it in July, it's going to be a completely different weight. But the only linear measurement that you've got to really go by is length. And he kind of, and I've since, like, I know that it's a theory and it's kind of been debunked because of the way that fish feed and how they just, it's not necessarily linear, but you kind of go into it with the expectation that a longer fish means it's an older fish. An older fish should have more experience and be harder to catch, is the way he explained it to me. So I started measuring instead of weight. I started measuring everything in length, and I still measure with weight because I'm a big replica guy. That's how I want to sort of itemize the achievements that I've made when I break a PB, is by doing a replica. And for that, it's all about measurements in multiple angles, getting every measurement possible, a great picture. And then the weight obviously is going to let that person designing the replica know and actually grasp what this fish actually looked like. So I started measuring in length. Right now, my PB is 19 3/4 inches,
Nice.
which is, up here, I've heard of 23s being caught. I don't think anything larger than that is really common, but I know that, there were some tournaments where I think somebody caught like a 26, 26 and a half or something had come up in another part of the country. But so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I figure with that, with that length measurement, that fish probably went about 3.5. That's probably where my PB is right now. My PB smallmouth is 2 3/4.
I figured up there would be predominantly smallmouth anyways. I don't know, the north is kind of known more for their smallmouth, and then the further you go south, it's more largemouth. I'm in Tennessee, so I'm kind of right in that realm where I get a little bit of best of both worlds.
Yep.
I'm still working on smallmouth though. I got to get out on the river more. I just started this past year because I didn't even know how good of a fishery I had 5 minutes down the road from me, Duck River. It's actually like a very well-known smallmouth fishery, and I'm like 5 minutes away, but I've been driving like an hour away to a lake to go fish for largemouth.
Yep. Oh yeah. We've got largemouth all over the place up here, but it's true. Like, I've always considered smallmouth to be something special because they're not in every body of water around here. You can find largemouth in almost any body of water up this way. Almost any body of water. And you can, smallmouth are there's something special about them. They just are. They're probably my favorite species to catch. I did catch a 15. I was in a tournament and I left my board back in the truck, so I didn't get to enter it. And I only got that measurement because I took some line and I measured the fish and then measured the line afterwards. And I'm like, it was a good smallie. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm sorry. It's been a really long week.
I hear you, man.
I've been working like crazy, and so now I'm just drawing blank. But yeah, smallmouth, they're like a completely different fight. I just back in December broke my PB largemouth, but before that it was like 21 inches, around 5.5 pounds.
Yep.
And my PB smallmouth is like 17 3/4.
It's a good smallie.
And I didn't weigh it, so I have no idea how much it weighed. But smallmouth generally weigh less than a largemouth. So that smallmouth fought so much harder than that largemouth.
Oh,
it's such it's crazy. Like, it's what it was like over 3 inches longer and a lot fatter. But I don't know, this river smallmouth, man, you can get obsessed with those, especially you hang into a good one. Because that one there, I cast out. I'm in current. I cast out, set my rod down or something, and I'm like adjusting my kayak because I'm starting to float back with everything because I'm casting up against the current. And then I pick up my rod and my line is like 30 foot to the left of where I cast at.
Oh, so he was just running.
Yeah, so I set the hook, and man, he was running back and forth, and I'm in clear water, so you can see him running back and forth. And man, it was just crazy, and heart pumping, adrenaline going, and all that. I didn't really have that with that 21-inch largemouth. I basically, I felt him bite, I set the hook, I reeled in real fast, got him in the net. That was it.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
My new PB was a little more fun than that, but he was really heavy, so that made it a lot more fun. But he was also cold. So at first he wasn't moving a lot. He was just heavy. Yeah. But when he saw the kayak, he started running a little more.
They started to realize it was going down and it was time to get away.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you're, listening to your podcast, you're more of like a finesse type guy, it seems like.
I'm more comfortable with finesse. I really am. And I'm trying to get a little bit out of that sort of box, because I'm the guy who, if the bite's tough, I'm going to downsize as much as I can. And I'm real comfortable throwing a drop shot. I'm really, really comfortable. I love throwing Ned rigs, weightless plastics. I'm really, really into throwing weightless stuff. I use a lot of spinning gear. But like right now, I'm trying to get more into power fishing.
One of us froze up.
Yep. It should come right back.
There we go.
So what I'm working on is I'm looking at maps so I can actually pay attention to contour lines and things. And then I'm just trying to get better this year, focusing on search baits. Lipless crankbaits I know are really versatile, so I'm kind of starting with that. But I'm basically, I want to get into some tournaments, but I know like this isn't the time, and I know it's just going to be a huge ton of frustration if I go into it and I'm not able to find fish, especially if I happen to get, like up here we only have, in our trails, there's only X amount of slots that you can get. They go fast. So if I'm able to get one and it's a body of water that I don't know at all, well, now the deck's stacked against me.
Right. And by the way, Sean, he's on call at work. He got a call and he had to answer it. Now he's actually got to go into work. So it'll be just me and Bobby for the rest of the episode here.
No worries.
It's kind of where you got a co-host, Sean the fisherman, and I've got my co-host Sean the wannabe fisherman. And no, I had to throw a jab out there at him.
I got to give you this. There you go.
All right. I need that. That would make me a little more professional like you. I need the sound effects. But
I love
it. Where were we? You were talking about tournaments and like trying to get ready for those. I did want to do a quick shout out. I believe in March we're going to try to start back up the paddle and fin noob tournaments. Believe we're going to keep the pay at, or the buy-in as $10. That was the whole thing starting. It wanted to be cheap where people aren't investing a lot of money. And if you're not already, make sure y'all join the group, Paddle and Fin Noob Tournaments on Facebook. That's where all the captains meeting and all the information and all that's going to be on there. When we get it up on Tourney X, we'll be posting the link there. So if y'all are interested in learning the catch, photo, release process, the kayak fishing tournament process, make sure you join in on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and y'all do something similar as well. Yeah.
So this is kind of crazy. When it comes to tournaments, we're really spread all over the place. We got really lucky. So like I said, Sean already does a bunch of tournaments. And I think for Massachusetts, he's won Massachusetts Kayak Tournaments Online Angler of the Year, I think 2 years in a row. He does the MAKB stuff, and he's gone up against some heavy hitters regularly, and we're really lucky because he's met some fantastic folks like Ken Wood from MAKB, Jason Ferreira. Also, he just did really, really well in the 10 Invitational. Also like Jay Gardner up in Maine from and actually that group also does EKF, Elite Kayak Fishing, which is a new series program. So it's kind of funny because I'm really new to tournament fishing as a whole, but I'm able to rub elbows because of this podcast and everything really well. And Sean has actually started as the tournament director for the Western division of MAKB.
Awesome.
So he's really, really involved with that. And then we do there's a local company called Chronic Trips, which if you think like for a millisecond about what that name is all about, you can kind of figure it out pretty quickly. And they wanted to do a virtual elevated fishing tournament, and they were, at the time I was just looking for content. So I reached out to the owner of Chronic Trips and I said, look, I'd love to cover the standings. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to enter just to try it out. We'll see how it goes. And it's an interesting tournament because it's salt and freshwater multi-species, and it's nationwide. So anybody can join and set everything up. And it's a fundraiser. It plants trees in like different parts. It's a little bit harder to get people fired up about it when they got to go out, on the cold, but they can compete against people that are down south. So it's a little bit smaller right now. We're hoping in the spring it kind of takes off, and that's every other month they do one of these. And then, so we've been involved giving info about the standings for that. We've been kind of involved with doing some videos, tutorials for like the CPR process and all of that stuff. And then in May, we're actually doing a bunch of Instagram polls to kind of like tailor our own listener tournament. And ideally what we want to do is figure out what generally like the listeners that are active, what they're really interested in doing for a tournament. And it's probably going to end up being freshwater exclusive, multi-species. And we have a point system that we're going to borrow from Chronic Trips that Sean actually developed, which levels the playing field. So, you can, just by fishing for other species, you catch a big bowfin, that's going to do more for you than just getting the biggest, So we've got that going on. So we've got tournament stuff all over the place, and our calendar is insane between MAKB, EKF, and all the other. We just partnered with Three Bells Outfitters in Connecticut as one of our sponsors. They have their own events going on too, so we're going to be all over the place.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I really like that Chronic Trips thing. It kind of helps to. The whole noob aspect and that, people learning the process and everything. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what we're doing with our noob tournaments. So we might have to do like a collab or something, or
I think we should.
When y'all do y'all's.
Yep.
Take y'all's best fisherman versus our best fisherman, and like we just paddle and fin versus Jigs and Bigs.
That's
see who's.
That's a great idea. I like that. Cool. Yeah, I love that. That's a fantastic idea. I'm all about that kind of stuff. Collaborating. I'm one of those people too that, especially like, when it comes to podcasting, Andrew was that roundtable with when the four of us got together and we're talking. Andrew was the one that set that up. And when he had, mentioned it to me, I was all about it. Like, I say, I have a saying that I really like, that none of us is as strong as all of us. And if we stick together, and build each other up, like all of these podcasts, they all have their own place, and they all have their niche. So I'm a big fan of networking and like helping people out, and like same thing, if I need something, I want to know that I can rely on somebody to say, hey, I've got a question about this. I think that's the best part about this. It's like community, and the fishing community is the same way.
100%, especially the kayak community.
Oh my God, yes.
You've heard like all the horror stories from the boating community about how nobody wants to share anything because they got to spend $200 just to go out on the water for a day or more, maybe, between gas and oil and everything, and if anything breaks down or blow a tire or anything, that's even more. So I can understand to an extent why somebody like that wouldn't want to share too much. But with the kayak community, like everybody is willing to help out and talk to you. You know, be in the middle of a tournament and people are like, "Oh, you're not catching anything? Here you go. Try this out."
I was doing great over here.
And by the way, Sean has joined back audio wise.
Okay.
And so hopefully we'll be able to get him in here and he'll be able to talk with us some. Can you hear Sean?
Nice. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
You sound like you're on the telephone.
Sweet.
But yeah, we just got done talking about, you know, they kind of do their own little tournament type thing, sort of like the Noobs tournament, but they're like a multi-species, you know, saltwater and freshwater and all that. And you know, what we're thinking of the idea, and you know, put the paddling, like our top anglers from the Paddle and Fin Noobs tournament up against their top anglers, and we'll do Paddle and Fin versus Jigs and Bigs. You like that?
That could be pretty sweet, man. I think that sounds like a great idea.
I think it'd be awesome. Absolutely.
I think it'd be pretty cool. I don't want to put too much pressure on nobody out there.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of using the tournament platform too, as once we start doing our listener events, I'm a real big fan of doing tournaments that are fundraisers. So we get behind a cause, and then a portion of the proceeds that come in, you know, some of that's obviously going to be allocated for prizes, and then the rest of it can go and do something positive. I'm all about that.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
Right, yeah, and a perfect way to tie that in, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we might need to incorporate something like that in with the noob tournament. You know, maybe set it up where like a big bass or something. Since we don't really do a big bass, we usually, you know, we try to get like a sponsored product or something to give to the person with big bass. But we may have to look into, like, you know, people pay an extra $5 or whatever if they want in on big bass. You know, they win half of it. If they win, the other half goes to some sort of charity or something like that.
That's an awesome idea. Yeah.
But so okay, we kind of got lost a little bit from earlier. Yeah, we were talking about finesse fishing. I don't know how we got here, but we were on finesse fishing earlier. Do you consider jig fishing finesse?
Man, that's a weird question, because in a way, you know, it's funny. In a way, like, yes, because it's generally relatively slow. Like, even if you're moving a jig fast or fast for a jig, unless you're swimming it, unless you're using, you're swimming a jig, it's pretty finessey. It really is. I find it's like one of those things that kind of like rides the line of in between. And I've had people tell me, you know, like, oh, of course you like, you know, fishing a jig because it's a finesse sort of approach. But, you know,
it's got its power fishing aspects. But I like to say it's finesse because, you know, I don't know how well you still keep up with the podcast, but I hate using a spinning combo. And you know, Sean and the other guys are always like, oh, we got to get you on more finesse techniques. I'm like, well, I throw a jig, you know, it's close enough to finesse.
It definitely is. I mean, it is. It's probably like, I'll say jigs and jerk baits are the finessiest of the power fishing like methods. Like, definitely jerk baits are like the finessiest of all the moving baits. You know, like, you get a good suspending jerk bait and you stop that sucker and it just like that kind of thing. I totally get. But I've power shotted before. Like, I've done drop shots with a bait caster. It's got to be like the right situation. Like, I probably would only do that with like super deep water. And I still don't know anything about fishing anything really deeper than like 15, 17, maybe 20 feet. But I've done power shotting in like 40-foot, you know, sections of this one lake. And it was on the advice of a guy that I was fishing with. And I'm just like, all right, we'll give it a go. We'll give it a shot. I had the biggest drop shot weight I've ever used, you know, and It's I definitely get where it works. And there was somebody on a Facebook group that was talking about finesse bait casters, like really light setups with reels that specialize in light lures.
Well, Online Fisherman, we had him on, and he was actually talking about that. Like, there's these bait casters that are made for like light lures. Like, he can throw a Ned rig on this bait caster. I'm like, that's perfect for me because I love bait casters.
Yep. I will say this. One of the biggest gripes I have when it comes to fishing is there's a handful. I think I did an episode one time where it was maybe it was questions or it was items or topics that I could deal with never seeing on a fishing Facebook group again was the list. And one of them was bait caster or spinning, because like I look at them like golf clubs. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have a job. And then there's like, I'm never going to top water frog with a spinning combo. It's just not going to happen. That's not me. I know some people use, spinning combos, spinning gear exclusively, and that's what they're going to do. I have a one of my spinning combos is a 7-foot medium heavy with a Lewis Mach 2, and I've got 30-pound braid on it. But basically that just allows me to use like 90% of what I have. If I'm fishing something that's real finessey, I have a long leader tied on, but it just lets me kind of like be really flexible with what I'm throwing. And then some of the other ones were, I forget, they were really good. Oh, catch and release or keep. That was another one. I'm like, I would be okay never having to hear that conversation again.
Well, the thing is, as far as the casting versus spinning thing, you hit it on the head. They both have their own separate purposes.
Yep.
Now, do people have their preference of which one they'd rather have?
Definitely.
Sure. But I mean, to be an efficient angler, you really got to have, at least one of each.
Yeah.
You got your bait caster for, your heavier, generally more power fishing type stuff, and then you got your spinning gear for your lighter, more finesse stuff. As far as the catch and release or keep. That right there, people are. I've got my opinions. I'm sure you got your opinion. Sean's got his opinion. Everybody's got their own opinion on that, and everybody's going to keep their opinion on that.
Yeah,
you're not going to convince anybody. It's like it's like politics. You're not going to change anybody's mind on it. I tell everybody back and forth on it.
Yeah, I say it all the time. There's no right answer when it comes to that. If it works for you, awesome. The only thing I ever bring to the table for that discussion is like, as long as you're a licensed angler in your state and you're abiding by what you're allowed to keep, then awesome.
If you're legal, I can't. There's nothing I can say about it.
Exactly.
So, why say anything about
it?
And I could also live with never hearing the word the phrase game changer ever again. Like that phrase, it's so overused and annoying. Like the game hasn't changed that much since that came out. So.
Absolutely. It's true. I'm guilty though. I use it all the time. Oh, there's a great comedy bit too about the word hilarious. that reminds me of, because it's just like you hear didn't really change my life. It's okay,
Yeah.
It's more of a marketing term than anything, really.
Yeah. I agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah, and I remember when Vibe came out with the sheer water, they actually kind of put their own little twist on it, which I actually like the way they did this, that we didn't just change the game, we ended it. And, I thought that was kind of an interesting take on that.
That's a strong flex, too, right there.
Yeah.
For the kayak world.
I mean, I feel like there were other kayaks that came out around that time that would have better been suited for that.
Yep.
Maybe like a Hobie 360. But they definitely had their ducks in the row as far as advertising.
Oh yeah.
That's a good line. It is a good line. I'll give them that.
People love those vibe kayaks too. The shearwater, people, they see.
Sorry, you cut out for a second, so I can't tell if you're.
All right, I think it's looking like it's back.
There we go. Hey, Sean, are you able to mute yourself, like while you're not talking? There we go. That's better.
Nice.
But so, where was I going with this? This is terrible. I'm such a terrible host. Like you're probably.
I love it, man.
I'm never coming on this podcast again.
No, Ryan, you have no idea. I love it. Like the whole thing is, it's just like if you're entertaining people and you're sharing information, who cares? There's no right way to do it. That's the beauty about podcasting. It's the Wild West. You know, it's like if you're running your show and you're doing it your way, and it's my key is this, it's organic. So one of the parts of my job is not only do I host game shows like in public and, you know, bars and restaurants and things like that, but I actually work with a software company that developed the game that I use, the one that I choose to use. And I travel in different areas of the country. I do conventions and I sell the product to other entertainers to do the same thing. And I all say, like, how did you turn this into a full-time career? What did you do? And I was like, you know what I did? I figured out my role. And what I did was I decided that I was just going to be myself and organic as I could be. And the audience, they can pick up on that. And as long as you're being yourself, I think, you know, and you're being genuine, you know, you can't please everybody, you know, so just do you, man. It's all good.
Yeah, 100%. I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to us and saying like they enjoy the podcast because they can relate to us. You know, they've been like they have the same struggles as we do, like trying to learn this. And you know, it took me, you know, in fishing, there's so many people that want to like beat on their chests, like, oh, I'm an amazing fisherman.
I'm the best.
All that. Yeah, and so, you know, it kind of, I guess, took some balls for me to be like, you know what, I suck at fishing and I need help.
That's huge, man.
And yeah, a lot of people have really connected with that right there.
Yeah, it's true. You give somebody something to relate to, and right there, you've got them because they can relate to you, and you know they can smell a phony a mile away, and it's just like you're not doing anybody any favors by trying to fit a mold that's not. Internet is terrible. I apologize, guys.
I don't know if it's you or me. You know, I live kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so I don't have the greatest internet. So it could be me, but either way, you know, we're here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think you know, for every really good fishing out there, there's 20 of us noobs that you know, so we're gonna probably have a bigger target audience reaching the people that connect with us than, you know, the pro fishermen out there. But you know, we'll take the fishermen here and there. But it's nice that all of us noobs can stick together.
That's a good point. That I hadn't even thought about that, but that's true. Like, what is it that everybody wants to know, or what is it that they're using the internet to get this information for? Most people are looking for tips and techniques, and they're trying to improve on what they have. And I think it was one of the first episodes I did. I said, now this podcast is going to be very selfishly for myself to like get as much knowledge as I can to improve.
100%.
You know, I think that's a major player. And yeah, there's a huge audience for it.
Yeah, I mean, I started this podcast because I sucked at fishing and I wanted to get better. And, you know, it helped other people along the way. Awesome.
Now, I assume it's worked, right? Like you've improved in those years. Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel the same way about myself. Like I look back the last year of records that I've kept versus 2019, where I thought I was just killing it. And I'm like, no way. I think I caught like 35 fish in 2019, and I caught almost, I did catch over 100, but I didn't document all of them. So I'm like, that's huge. That's a major difference. And it was a lot of that actually came from finesse fishing. and also pushing the boundaries of like, I'm going to try this, and I'm not going to avoid this body of water because there's so much grass or there's a bunch of lily pads or something. I'm going to learn how to work with it. And I put the time in, and it was huge,
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because in 2019, I also caught somewhere in the realm of like 35, 40 fish, and I kept up with that. And, you said you listened to my very first episode I ever did of Bass Fishing for Noobs, and I went over and I caught, I think, like 17 fish in my first like 5 years of bass fishing.
Yep.
Like total. And then I caught like somewhere between 35 to 40 fish in 2019, the year I started the podcast. And I was like, oh, I like doubled my numbers. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then this past year, I can't tell you how many fish I caught, because I caught way more than that. And, it's awesome to see, like, this is actually working. You got to take in all the information you get from here and put it to work out there. It's not just going to instantly happen. And I think that's what I was kind of expecting before. Is like, okay, there's a piece of wood, there should be a bass beside it.
Yeah.
Not taking into account that, it might be in direct sunlight and only like a foot deep, and it's 100 degrees outside. So they probably moved a little deeper at that point. And so man, it's been awesome growing, and I can't wait to see where I'm at, next year, the year after that, or 5 years from now. Like,
definitely.
Who knows? Maybe I'll be on the top of like KBF and Hobie and all that. Not likely, but you never know.
It can happen though. And if you keep at it, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, dream big, man. You got this.
Yep. Me and Sean are gonna take over the boat scene as partners.
I love that.
That's my big dream right there. Sean, you're gonna have to move down here.
I was just gonna say, I guess I got to move to Tennessee. I can make that happen.
Like, darn, I got to move down there. And
it's funny. I had a couple of guests on that were from East Tennessee, and they were talking recently. Slaunch Doctor. Yeah, they are Brad and Zach. Great guy. I mean, like, what a great conversation. Like, it was just such a good conversation, but they were talking about where they are in East Tennessee, and they're just like, yeah, this is a great fishery. It's pretty amazing. It really is. And then I was talking with Hank Bass Geek. And I've been watching his. In fact, actually, one of my best friends, one of my oldest fishing buddies, we quote Hank in when we fish quite often. Anytime we get hung up fishing a jig, we just look at one another. We're like, it's a log. It's just. But I mean, there's some great fishing in there. Like in your area, I think that's such a great spot. Have you ever listened to The Bite? It's another fishing podcast.
I never heard of it.
What is it? SB Fishing, Spot Burner, and it's a bunch of guys in like the Virginia area. I feel like something about that like area, that corner, that pocket of like I don't want to call it like I don't want to say it's necessarily the South, but like the Mid-Atlantic and going inland a little bit. I feel like that's such a great section right there, because you can get great smallmouth. You have you just have so much that you can get to. So there's so much of this country I haven't fished, that I would just love to.
Oh, the furthest I've traveled to fish is like 3 hours. So
that's like me too.
I think it'd be cool to branch out a little more, and I'd like to be out more East Tennessee, like where those guys are.
Yeah,
I'm in Middle Tennessee. I'm about 40 miles south of Nashville.
Okay,
and so I don't feel like the fishing is as good around here as it is, out east, especially like smallmouth type stuff.
Yep.
But we do have some pretty good fisheries around here. We got Percy Priest, which you'll either love it or hate it, and that'll change every time you go there.
Yep.
The rock garden, it's just pretty much all rocks, not really any vegetation, not a whole lot of timber or anything. It's rocks everywhere.
I'm gonna take a picture right here so I can get this for the gram. Split screen.
How's my hair?
Oh, great.
Okay. Yeah, got to make sure,
Oh man.
So did you ever say how you got into a kayak?
Yeah, it's all Sean.
Okay. Yeah, I know you talked about like getting back into fishing and stuff like that. And that right there, your story seems to be a common theme for people that like grow up fishing. It seems like around high school they get out of it for a while, most everybody. And then they get into adulthood and get back into it. And I'm kind of the same way. I grew up, fishing. We lived on the same like 100-acre farm as my great grandpa, and he had stocked pond with catfish all the time. I never did bass fish till my 20s, but fish for live bait. When my parents divorced, I lived with my dad, and we used to go to this pay lake, and we'd fish in these catfish tournaments and stuff like that. And we fished a little bit when I was in high school. He had a boat and everything, but like we hardly ever caught anything. We're mostly out there just enjoying the weather,
hanging out.
Take the tube out there and pull me around on the tube and stuff. It was in my 20s. A guy I worked with, he bass fished, and we were on night shift. He's like, "Hey, you want to go out Friday morning when we get off?" That was our last day of the week. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So me, him, and this other dude, we all went out, and I had like this, Walmart special where it has like 5 or 6 different color worms and a couple hooks and a couple. I had one of those, so I took that and my little $20 spinning combo, and I didn't catch anything. They both caught like maybe a couple of piece, but like I was hooked after that. Like I wanted to be able to, and it probably took me like a year and a half to actually be able to catch a bass. But I finally caught one on a jig. You've heard that story, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yep.
But yeah, that I've been hooked on bass fishing ever since. I can't hardly sit still to catfish anymore.
Yeah. It's so funny because when I got into fishing like in 2012, my buddy and I had gone out, and he would fish with his father-in-law pretty regularly. And his father-in-law, so my buddy is he moved here from Poland when he was in like 7th or 8th grade, maybe 6th grade, something like that. He was just a kid, and his wife's family, same thing, came over here, and fishing, like, for them is not about sport. It's about food. They catch and they keep it. Basically, they keep everything they catch. He would catch like eels, and that night they would be cleaned and in the smoker. And if you've never had smoked eel, you're not living. Like, it is fantastic.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'd be scared to eat it. It sounds gross.
I'll tell you this. The thing is this. My biggest gripe with like harvesting fish and eating fish locally where we live, there's a lot of mill towns around us like that are just out, and a lot of that water is heavily polluted. That's the biggest issue. So for me, I'll catch stocked fish all day or migrating fish and harvest those, but to catch, native fish, it's not something I want in my diet necessarily regularly, because there's a lot of like factory runoff and stuff. But I remember how it started. He and I started fishing together. We would just go and fish for catfish. I'd get a bucket of chicken livers, and what I would do is I'd buy them on like Friday on my way home from work, and I would just put them in the backyard, and I'd go fishing on Sunday.
Yeah, just get them as stinky and nasty as possible.
Yep, and you know what? They work so well. I would take
if you can get it to stay on the hook.
And that's the thing. What I would do is I'd get a little piece of like pantyhose, and I would twist it around, and then I would use that on the hook. Oh man, it was great. And that was fun, but it was something about bass fishing. I was just like, man, I keep seeing this. Like, and why is it that largemouth are the species? Like, it just never dawned on me. Like when I fished with my father when I was a kid, we'd always fish for trout. We were always looking to catch our limit for that day, fishing with live bait, either, a really light setup on the bottom with a split shot sinker, or we were using a bobber up top, depending. And there was one day I was out fishing with my buddy, and I happened to hook a pretty good sized black crappie. And I'm like, okay, this is a different species. This is pretty cool. That's all right. Not too bad. And I was like, I think I need to diversify. So I got into that one tackle subscription service, Tackle Grab. And I'll never forget this. I got my first crankbait. And it was an Ish Monroe. I think it was called like a Big Papa. It was a square bill. Huge square bill. And I had one rod at the time. So this one day I said, okay, so we're just going to go in here and I'm going to learn this presentation. So I watched a bunch of videos, read a bunch of stuff, and I went out with that square bill one time and I caught my first largemouth. And I was like, oh, this is what this is all about. Done deal. So then from then on, it was all about, so now I want to learn this. And it's funny because I swear by a jig right now. And I have a jig tied on one of my rods all the time. And I have a rule that I always follow called follow with a jig. Like I'll be throwing something top water. There'll be a blow up. I might miss it. I get that back in. I grab the other rod. I throw a jig, and I feel pretty confident that I'm going to hook whatever I missed. Different presentation. It's just, it's a good thing. But I struggled with a jig for a long time. Or 19. I was out one that I was on that fish a million times before, and I made it a point just to keep throwing that same fucking jig, and I hooked a monster. This is a good story. This should have been, it probably was my PB. It went 4.5. I'll bet you it went 4.5. I hooked this little son of a bitch, and I was fishing on this concrete platform where there was a railing, and this is on a dam. And I pitched this jig right over to the corner where the dam meets, like sort of where the spill is, the edge of the dam. It's a spillway. And as it just on the drop, it for a ride. Like I saw that line just go. I set the hook like crazy. I get this fish over. Now I'm about like 6 or 8 feet above the line on this concrete. I can't flip this fish. There's no way. I can't do it. I'm going to break this medium heavy rod if I try. So what I did was I took off my tackle backpack. I'm a big guy. I go 300 pounds. It's like, all right, I got to get on the dam. So I shimmy underneath the roots there, and I'm standing up of the dam, the fish over, and I get holding them. It was like a religious experience. I was shaking. The biggest fish I've ever had in my life. I get the jig, out, and I go to reach over to grab my bag and my scale and my phone, and I can't reach it. It's too far over from where it is. Now I've got this 4.5 pound fish in my hand, and I can't climb up onto this platform again to get up there to get my phone, the scale, everything I need to get this done, because it's all in my tackle bag. I'm like, all right, I'm not looking to kill a trophy. So I release the fish. He swims off into the depths again. I climb back up there and I call my buddy, the guy who I fish with all the time. And I said, you are never going to believe this. Number one, I caught my first fish on a jig. Number two, I can't give you proof because of X, Y, and Z. He's like, dude, I believe you, but like, yeah, you're right. Like and it's like, that is one of the biggest, like, I always ask everybody their biggest, like epic fail like this, like, that's me. Like there was no redemption there. Like none at all. It was crazy. But like getting into the kayak, it was all Sean. Like I was always a bank fisherman, totally comfortable. Really didn't fear any kind of like, branches or anything being around me. I was like, I taught myself how to flip and pitch specifically so that I could use my bait casters more effectively from the bank. And I got pretty good at it. And then I went out with Sean one day and he was like, you got to get in a kayak. You're going to love it. It's going to be amazing. And I did. I was hooked. And then the second time I hated it because it was windier than hell. And then after that, it was just like I started to kind of realize, I was like, okay, so there's a little bit more thought that has to go into this in order to do it the right way. And I've had some awesome times out there. And I especially where we live, having a kayak makes way more sense than having a large boat, unless you're going to do some significant travel, you know? So for our local stuff anyway.
Yeah, and what kind of kayak are you in now?
So right now I've got an Ascend 128T. It's like an aircraft carrier.
Yeah. I was actually looking at the Ascend 12Ts and
that's what I started
128T. I was looking at. I actually had some buddies that have those kayaks, and when I first got into kayaking, I was going out with them, and I was in like a little $200 Pelican. And, I saw those, and to me, they're like, okay, that's what a top of the line kayak is right there.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I wanted for my first like real kayak.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting a Vibe Seaghost 130.
Nice.
And
it's a good boat.
Yeah. And, I've learned since then that there are a lot better kayaks than the Ascend. But,
oh, sure.
For the money, since I haven't actually been in one, but it seemed like they're not too bad. I like the open floor plan. They seem to have a good seat on them.
Sit on top is really like the name of the game. It really is. I mean, we got lucky this year. Three Bells had worked with us, and they're gonna put us on some demo programs. And they're taking amazing care of us. So Sean just got hooked up with a native Slayer. Pedal I forget the brand they have, but it's a pedal drive kayak, and it's like a Cadillac. I mean, he's always been a native guy. Like he uses
is it the Slater Max?
I don't know if it's the
native
Max.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the Max, because he's got the Slayer, and then there was another one, I think it's called the Titan, which is a little bit wider. And I'm a bigger guy, so there's talk that they may want to put me in a larger kayak, like a Jackson big rig or that Titan, and Sean had suggested, he's like, you might want to try the Titan. He's like, it's just, for me, it's just too wide. It's too much boat. But I'm like, no, I would love to get to the point where I can comfortably stand on a kayak, but I've got more work I have to do on myself than anything before that's going to happen, but we'll get there.
Hey, that Titan or big rig, I feel like, I don't know how clumsy you are, but even at you said you're around 300 pounds or so. I feel like you'd still be able to stand up in those.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
They're just such stable platforms. Both of them. We had a get together with a group of us from Paddle and Fin back in October on Dale Hollow Lake. And Jay Randall, he was in his big rig, and I'm in my Jackson Bite FD, which is the big rig, and Jay's like, "Hey Ryan, can you do this?" and like swings his legs off the kayak, and he's like sitting sideways on the kayak, and I'm like, "Yeah, I could do that," and then I almost flipped my kayak over trying to do it. But we have Dan Perry that does the reel down segment. He used to be on the native team. He was in a native Titan 12, and he loved that boat. He said it's the most stable kayak out there. Obviously, like a Blue Sky is probably the most stable, but it's not really a kayak. But he said, as far as like kayaks, it's most stable out there.
I have fished out of a native Ultimate, which is like a kayak canoe hybrid. It's weird. It's got the stadium seat, but you do sit inside it. It's kind of interesting, and that's what Sean was originally using. But it's funny. I like, at least on the trails that he fishes, he was telling me that there's like, if there's 20 anglers on in any tournament on one body of water, maybe he's one of 3 that are paddling. Everybody else has pedals or motors.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else. And I'm like, and I told him, I said, I think this year could be a big difference. I'd love to see what it looks like at the end of this season with you pedaling now, because he had to make this decision because of he's got knee problems and stuff. And he's just like, he's like, the more pedaling he can do, the better, it's going to help him out. So he made the switch. And
it's such a huge difference as well.
Yeah.
Like, I used to not go very far from the boat ramp at all when I was paddling. And now that I pedal, man, I go miles.
Yeah.
And around here, pretty much all the kayak tournaments are pedal or paddle only, no motors allowed. So,
oh yeah.
And I don't know. I couldn't see going back to like full-time paddling now that I have a pedal drive kayak.
Oh yeah.
It's great. He's gonna love it. And if you get him one, you'll love it too.
Oh yeah, I'm psyched. It really, like, it's an amazing sort of position that we sort of found ourselves in, being able to work with them, and they're amazing company. Like our whole thing from the beginning wasn't ever that we wanted to work with like a specific brand per se, but we wanted to reach out with like retailers that were committed and like focused on service, and like they're just fantastic. We recorded an episode live in their showroom, and it was so cool. Like, there's such a great group of folks, and it's pretty awesome. But it's funny, like I have a friend of mine, he's on Instagram, Delirious Angler, and D has what is it? It's an Old Town Topwater pedal drive. And that thing is great. We've done some fishing trips together before, and this thing is fantastic. But even he's like, I'm going to buy a 10-footer that's a paddle yak and something I can just move around really easy. He's like, I've got the pedal drive that's going to be for tournaments, and then for fun fishing when we're just doing whatever, I'm going to have this smaller kayak. I don't have to worry about like throwing it on the trailer or anything like that. I can just throw it in the back of the truck. It'll be cool, and keep it nice and easy. So
yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
That's something that I'd like to do too. Is get something like light, easy to I throw it over my shoulder or whatever. Because like I said, I'm like 5 minutes away from Duck River down here. Well, my current setup, it takes a little while to get it all set up and get it down to the water and all that. Something light where I can just throw on my shoulder, man. Maybe one day in the summer or something after work, and just come home, throw it in the truck, run it down there real quick, grab me a couple rods, have me a little backpack or something that's ready to go with a little bit of tackle, just throw it on there, run down to the water, throw it in and go. 5 minutes, you're in the water paddling and good to go.
And then think about the wear and tear on your other boat for if you're doing tournaments. You can save all that wear and tear. So now you're only using it for tournaments, anything like that. It's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
Smart guy.
Well, hey, man, I'm going to start wrapping up here.
Sure.
We're a little over an hour here. If you want to take a minute real quick, shout out any social media or sponsors or anything you might have.
Absolutely, man. So where the podcast is Jigs and Bigs. We're on Instagram. Just search Jigs and Bigs. You can go to jigsandbigs.com to get all the more information, stream the podcast if you want. We're on all the big platforms and everything. I do the show. I'm also on Instagram, Bobby Roast Beef, Sean the Fisherman, also on the show. And we work with 2 sponsors that we've got. One is 3 Bells Outfitters, and that's 3, the word 3, Bells, like Southern Bells, ES, and then outfitters.com. And then our longest running sponsor is Old Glory Outdoors. And Old Glory is an amazing local retailer. They ship worldwide, or well, not worldwide, all kinds of great stuff. They partner with us for our giveaways. All kinds of stuff. And we normally do like a monthly giveaway, and we partner with a couple of other Instagram pages too. So, give us a follow. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. This is so cool. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like, I love this podcast.
No, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I like your podcast. I haven't caught every episode since I started listening, but I listen, whenever I can. And like I said, you have one of the best produced podcasts out there. audio wise, like it sounds amazing, especially compared to us, because we record this, we chop the beginning and end, and we're done.
Yep.
And,
I appreciate it, man. It means a lot. Like, that's the biggest compliment, because I put a lot of years into this, and I'm not using anything amazing. This microphone is garbage. Like, it just is. Like, you
just have a really amazing voice, man.
Thank you, dude. It's one of those things. It's like, I appreciate it. I try to put a lot into the podcast production wise. I really love the way that Andrew at Tackle Talk kind of surmised what Jigs and Bigs is. It's kind of like that crazy morning show. Like, Sean the Fisherman says it all the time. He's like, are we officially like cheesy shock jocks? And oh yeah, absolutely we are. That's what we're going for.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. Everybody,
Cool.
Make sure you go check out Jigs and Bigs podcast. Really good information on there too with him and Sean the Fisherman. But Sean had to step out again. So I guess I got to open it and close it. But this has been Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast, bringing you the techniques. See, I need Sean here. Bringing you the techniques, tricks, and tips to help you rip more lips. Later, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com